A frightening discovery, a body found in a running car in Brampton in the driveway of a home. Good afternoon. The discovery was made by the family and they didn't know the man in the car in their driveway.
The case has been handed over to Peel Regional Police homicide detective. CTV Sean Leithong is covering the story. He joins us live with what we know so far. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, I'm standing on Millstone Drive in Brampton. I'll just step out of frame so you get a sense of what we're seeing right now. As the camera looks in, you can see sort of a yellow tarp off in the distance. That's the area of the driveway where the car was found at about 1 o'clock this morning. The homeowner, as you mentioned, arriving home from her job at the airport to see a running car. She called her adult children out into the driveway area. They tried to talk to the man who was behind the wheel, but found out he had later died. A man found dead inside a vehicle that was found parked in a driveway with no relation to the homeowner.
Last night when I came from work, I saw one car in my driveway and the car was on.
It was around 1 a.m. The car was parked at a home in the area of Tropez Court and Millstone Drive in Brampton. The home occupants came outside to try and talk with the man who was sitting in the driver's seat.
My brother went out and was trying to talk to that person. I went out to see as well, and we just saw this person wasn't responding.
Paramedics arrived and began life-saving measures.
The paramedics did come, and then they did. We were just watching from inside, but they did come and they were trying to. The person in the car was moved from the vehicle, and they were just doing CPR trying to get the person.
According to Peel Police, the victim had been shot.
The victim was found deceased and he was pronounced deceased at the scene by paramedics.
Both the victim and the body of the deceased man have been removed. Homicide has taken over the investigation and police forensics are on site. At this point, police have not said where the shooting actually took place.
We believe this is an isolated incident and investigators do not believe there is any threat to public safety.
So far, there is no word on any suspects and police are asking for the public's help in finding any video evidence that may explain where the vehicle came from. Now, in trying to piece things together, police actually have a very wide window they're looking towards. Anytime between 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning, they're asking anybody who may have any video evidence, anything that looks out of place, to please contact Peel Police. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Nathan and Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. Still to come on CTV News at noon, the great escape at the Toronto Zoo. This is footage of an orangutan that's not where it's supposed to be.
But first, let's take a look at the forecast. There's a live shot of the city, nice and cool by the water, a little bit different in other areas. A sun-cloud mix, the humidity is back and the UV index is high. Rain expected later tonight, but clearing tomorrow. Now let's look at that satellite radar. You can see that rain, it is heading our way and eventually it's going to hit us tomorrow or late tonight. As for right now, it is hot, 22 in Hamilton, 26 in Niagara Falls, but it feels like 29 and in the high 20s in most areas. The islands right now feels like 29. At Pearson Airport, same thing, and it's going to go up to feeling like 35, even though it's only 28, the forecast. We'll give you a look at the long-range forecast a little bit later on in the show.
The hockey world is mourning the passing of Johnny Gaudreau.
The Columbus Blue Jackets star and his brother died after being hit by a car in New Jersey last night. The 31-year-old was cycling with his younger brother, Matthew, in their home state when the tragedy happened. They were in the area for their sister's wedding scheduled for today in Philadelphia. Police said the driver is suspected of being under the influence of alcohol. He was charged with 2 counts of death by auto and jailed at the Salem County Correctional Facility. Gaudreau starred for 8 seasons with the Calgary Flames before joining the Blue Jackets.
You always expect the 6'2", 200-plus-pound giant of a man to do well in the NHL. But what I think always connects with hockey fans is the guy who's a little bit smaller in stature, the guy who's not drafted in the first round, the player who isn't guaranteed success. When you see those stories succeed on the ice, it's easy to root for him.
Gaudreau was a 3-time 30-goal scorer and had a career-best 40 goals in 2021-2022. The 7-time All-Star played 11 seasons in the NHL. And Commissioner Gary Bettman released a statement that reads in part, while Johnny's infectious spirit for the game and show-stopping skills on the ice earned him the nickname Johnny Hockey, he was more than just a dazzling hockey player. He was a doting father and beloved husband, son, brother, and teammate who endeared himself to every person fortunate enough to have crossed his path. And the Blue Jackets released a statement saying, he thrilled fans in a way only Johnny Hockey could. The impact he had on our organization and our sport was profound, but pales in comparison to the indelible impression he made on everyone who knew him. Johnny embraced our community when he arrived 2 years ago, and Columbus welcomed him with open arms. We will miss him terribly and do everything that we can to support his family and each other through this tragedy. And the Maple Leafs posted a message on social media that reads in part, "Our thoughts and heartfelt condolences go out to the Gaudreau family, their friends, the Columbus Blue Jackets and Calgary Flames organizations, and all those who knew and loved Johnny and Matthew during this unimaginably difficult time." Well, here at home, investigators say they'll be asking Interpol for a red notice in the search for Zhejiang Marco Hu.
Who is wanted in connection with the murder of a Markham real estate agent. CTV's John Woodward reports.
Anita Moy shows off luxury homes, commercial spaces, and awards for her role as a leading real estate agent in Markham, whose listings are often in the multi-millions. That office, dark Thursday night. Moy won't return to it. She was killed at some point after she went missing on August 9th. Police discovered her Mercedes-Benz in a medical plaza and then searched this Stouffville farm. Her burned remains eventually found in Perry Sound on August 12th on a rural property the coroner confirmed belonged to Moy. Police have said she was taken there in a Sprinter van, later releasing pictures of this van and a Porsche Cayenne they say is connected to the man wanted for her murder, Zhejiang Marco Hu. A Canada-wide warrant was issued for him on Wednesday, but on Thursday, police said he had slipped through their grasp.
CBSA, our Canada Border Services Agency, has confirmed to our investigators that Zhejiang Marco Hu, a 47-year-old from the city of Markham, has traveled to Hong Kong.
Exactly when, police didn't say, but investigators aren't giving up. They are set to make an application to Interpol for a red notice, a request to law enforcement worldwide.
A red notice is actually an international alert for a wanted person. It's not an actual arrest warrant. However, there is no expiry.
Big job. Hong Kong's a big place. But let's face it, people do show up.
CTV public safety analyst Chris Lewis said police forces in Hong Kong will have their own contacts to help in the manhunt. Also charged 3 teens who allegedly used Moy's credit card. It's not clear what Hu's alleged motive may have been.
Wouldn't be surprised if there was some relationship there, either business dealings or a real estate deal or something going on that is behind all of this.
Comments on her last video about a visit to Toronto's Chinatown say rest in peace. Another says, I hope whoever did this to you will never see the light of day.
John Woodward, CTV News.
In other news, human remains have been found on a property in Tiny Township. Now, the remains were discovered by a contractor working on a home on Tiny Beaches Road South, which runs along the southeastern shoreline of Georgian Bay. OPP say the initial investigation suggests the discovery is likely historical. A forensic anthropologist is assisting with the investigation. OPP are asking for the public's help as they renew efforts to solve a cold case murder.
Today marks 14 years since the murder of Sonia Varashin, and her killer has yet to be found. On August 30th, 2010, officers in Orangeville found the 42-year-old's vehicle abandoned behind a business. They contacted the OPP, and Varashin's remains were found days later in a wooded area in Caledon. Investigators say they believe someone will have the missing piece of information needed to help identify those responsible for the murder, as they hope to bring resolution and perhaps some closure to her family. CTV's public safety analyst Chris Lewis is the former commissioner of the OPP, and he joins us now. I'm sure you followed this case closely. Hard to believe it's been 14 years, but nice to know that officers are still looking for whoever did this.
Absolutely, Michelle. I recall when it happened, and I even went down and met with the team of investigators of the day. It was a very high-profile case, very tragic, involving a young nurse that never seemed to ever hurt anybody in her life. But these cases never go away. If they're never really cold cases per se. Some are just more active than others. And this one's had investigators going all through the years, and they're obviously seeking more information from the public because somebody out there knows something that would help.
I remember being a reporter on the scene in those days, and we've seen extremely cold cases get solved recently. What do you think? Does any of the evidence stick out to you as something that could possibly lead to whoever did this?
Absolutely. I mean, there was three scenes here. There was her residence where something happened, and I believe there was some DNA recovered there that they had yet to match to anyone, which may well be an indicator who did it, if in fact they ever, match it through some other means. There's where the car was found in that area, and the car itself, and then of course where her body was found. So they've gathered all kinds of forensic evidence there, and someday that might provide a match for them.
When cases go cold behind the scenes, maybe you could give us a sense. What are things that police can do to keep this alive?
Well, things like they're doing now, putting out some sort of a request. They put out quite a lengthy video in interviews with the now officer in charge and investigators looking at the scene, trying to spur some tips from the public. And at the same time, they review all the forensic evidence in all these cases on a regular basis. As technology advances, the forensic sciences advances, sometimes there's the ability to match something through some forensic means that didn't exist maybe at the time of a murder. So we've had cases 30 years old that end up matching DNA that they couldn't match at the time because of the technology of the day.
Yes, and you talk about DNA. I mean, police have been almost annually, we've been reminded of this case, and they have said, we have your DNA, we just need to find out who you are. It's, and also, we have to note, there's a $50,000 reward that still exists. Have you seen over the years, sometimes after 10 years, 14 years, that people who might know something finally crack and they feel as though they have to share it?
Quite often that's the case, Michelle. Sometimes they get in trouble and they're looking to make a deal of some sort. And sometimes their conscience just gets the better of them and they go forward and say, hey, I know who did it. Or in other cases, people are reluctant to speak up because they think, oh, the police probably know this, but the police may not. And that someone that has one little piece of evidence might really fill the puzzle in for investigators and lead them to a successful resolution. And the bottom line, whoever did this may hurt others and they want to get that person off the street.
That is a good point. CTV's public safety analyst Chris Lewis and former OPP commissioner, thanks for joining us. Hopefully this discussion might help as well. Take care.
Let's hope. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, the Toronto Zoo is investigating after one of its orangutans somehow got out of a new outdoor enclosure.
The incident happened last night. This is video that was sent to our breaking news email showing Kambali sitting on a pole next to the pedestrian walkway at the enclosure. He is not supposed to be here. That is not where he's supposed to be. We're told that he went for a walk among zoo guests. So this is video that we're going to show you from last month before the Great Escape. And you can see Kambali was quite adept at doing a high wire act. The Toronto Zoo says staff scrambled to clear guests from the area.
Part of the training is evacuating the zoo. So we, in a very calm, mild-mannered way, our volunteers, we also have our health and safety team and our wildlife care team all came together as a group and then ushered our guests back to safety. What we would normally do in that case is help people understand there is an incident on site and that they are moving to an area of safety while we deal with the situation. Orangutans are normally very peaceful animals, even out in the wild. It doesn't mean that there could never have been a dangerous situation, but again, as I said, with the training and the team that was in place, we had a very, very good outcome.
Kambali was returned to his habitat without incident. Video is now being reviewed to determine how this happened. The zoo is also appealing to any guests who were in the area and may have video to get in touch. The outdoor orangutan habitat is closed until further notice.
As Toronto braces for the ongoing impacts of climate change, the federal government is teaming up with the city to protect vulnerable neighborhoods from future flooding events.
Just this past summer, you saw flash flooding in Toronto and other parts of southern Ontario. And this caused an estimated $940 million in damage to our communities. This disaster shares a glimpse of how costly and disruptive flooding because of climate change can cause to our communities and to our families. So it reminds us once again the importance of investing in resiliency and mitigation measures.
In the wake of those floods, the two governments are committing more than $323 million to modify the Black Creek and Lavender Creek in the Rockcliffe-Smythe area, as well as other infrastructure.
Building a flood wall on the east side of Western Road at Black Creek to further help protect nearby areas from flooding. In other words, wider rivers, streams, wider bridges, wider culverts, so water can flow and not get into your basement or on the road.
We draw your attention to the U.S. now, where Kamala Harris sat down for her first interview since becoming the Democratic presidential candidate.
During the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. The economy had crashed, in large part all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America, and today we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world.
Recent polls have shown Harris has a razor-thin edge against Republican challenger Donald Trump. She hopes to continue the momentum and make inroads into battleground states such as Georgia, where the interview was conducted. An Etobicoke convenience store has been hit with a 3-week liquor and lottery license suspension after it was found selling alcohol beverages before the government's new policy comes into effect. An Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario inspector visited the Maybell Tuck shop near Islington and Bloor on August 16th and found various alcoholic drinks were already available for customers. The inspection also found the store was selling alcoholic beverages not bought from official LCBO channels and also selling spirits, which corner stores will not be permitted to sell. Convenience stores will be able to obtain a liquor license and start selling beer, wine, and ready-to-drink beverages as of September 5th. We're getting word of a cyber attack at the Toronto District School Board.
The TDSB says identifying information regarding some students may have been exposed. TDSB officials first reported in June that an unauthorized party had gained access to its computer systems. Now they say it may have included student information such as their name, the school name, grade, TDSB email address, student number and birthday and month. In a letter to parents, the board says its cybersecurity team and external security partners have advised the risk to students is low, and they have not so far seen any public disclosure of student data.
The country's economy grew slightly faster than expected last quarter. Statistics Canada says GDP was up an annualized rate of 2.1%, surpassing the Bank of Canada's forecast. The report linked this growth to higher government spending, business investments in engineering and equipment, and household spending on services. Preliminary estimates showed the economy stayed flat in July. The new GDP reading comes as the Bank of Canada prepares for its next interest rate decision on Wednesday.
Well, if you're heading out of town for the long weekend, you're getting a bit of a break at the gas pumps. Prices have hit their lowest level since April. If you see the price at $1.54 a liter, that's pretty much the going rate today. Canadians for Affordable Energy President Dan McTeague joins us live. Dan, great to see you. So we had a go ahead. We had a drop at midnight, but it is the long weekend. It almost seems weird that prices have gone down. Is this going to last?
Well, it's only going to last until midnight tonight, at which point gas prices are up 2 cents a liter tomorrow, back to $1.55, $1.56 a liter. But Sunday looks like it might actually bring us right back again. The sort of yo-yo up and down, but more to the downside is great news for consumers. And, you know, when you consider this time last year when you and I spoke on the same weekend, we were looking at $1.67.9 for a liter of gasoline average in Toronto. That was pretty much the average across Canada. Despite the carbon taxes having gone up 4 cents a liter, that's an 18-cent difference between this year and last year. And it's not just because the Canadian dollar is perhaps a little stronger. It has everything to do with the fact that this market is extremely volatile, and a lot of energy traders are very nervous. They're looking at the economic data around the world and saying things are not as good as they think, and things are slowing down. And therefore, they believe demand is likely to decrease. The other thing that just came out, Nathan, just past hour or so, has been OPEC has now decided maybe it'd be a good time to start pumping back more oil into the market. And as a result, they've been sort of holding back in production for the past year and a half. That's coming to an end. That could mean even lower prices, not just now, but say on September 15th, and I'm pretty darn sure you and I are going to be talking about the big decrease of 8 or 9 cents a liter as a result of us returning to winter blend gasoline.
Yeah, I hope so. Also, in some areas, we're seeing $1.34 in the West End, $1.40 in Scarborough. How do you explain that?
Yeah, well, that's gas stations giving up their retail margin. It costs gas stations on a day like today where it's $1.53.9, $1.54.9. It runs them about $1.44 to buy their gasoline. So anything below that is below cost, and it means that they're getting support from their refineries that are making about 10 to 15 cents a liter, turning crude into gasoline. So look for these things to happen, and I'm not surprised. This is the long weekend. Demand has been good, but not enough to get rid of the summer inventory of gasoline. So it looks like they're burning through that. We saw one retailer, Couche-Tard's 7-Eleven, making a decision to drop gasoline 10 cents a liter for customers between 4 and 7 p.m. yesterday. Looks like everybody else responded and doesn't want to lose market share. That's critical because we're looking at a very competitive market in which consumers are the big winners.
Yeah, that's good for us. So in the fall, are you thinking it's going to go down to $1.30 a liter? How low might we go?
No, I think we'll be back. 148 looks like what we're heading towards, say, around September the 15th, 145, 148, with some stations on the periphery after 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon shedding that 8-cent retail margin that it takes for them to pay to operate their pumps, honor your credit cards, and pay their staff. They might sacrifice that if they do well during the day, and we could see scenarios develop where 142 becomes more commonplace around the GTA by that point. But wait for September 15th, because I think the news is going to be very good. Not great for diesel because it's going to go in the other direction.
All right. Canadians for Affordable Energy President Dan McTeague, always a pleasure. Take care.
Great to be here. Thanks, Nathan.
An advocacy group is voicing concerns about the ability to keep buses on the road this school year. School Bus Ontario says the province has severely slashed funding for operators in many regions. It points to a new funding formula that they say won't add up to enough to pay drivers adequately or to buy new buses. The group also says the government is reducing the amount it pays for fuel, leaving operators worried about filling up their tanks. It warns of the possibility of more bus cancellations and disruptions through the school year unless funding cuts are reversed.
The beginning of the school year can be an anxious time, perhaps more so for the parents of the nearly 10% of children with food allergies.
Across the country, some schools have done away with bans on allergens like peanuts, leaving parents and advocates concerned about how to keep kids safe. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin reports.
Come on in. Back to school time, back to packing lunches. For Izzy, going into grade 2, no nuts on the menu. She's allergic.
She has her tomato Alfredo, which is her favorite thing, and then peanut-free as much as we can.
But there's now no strict no peanut or no nut rule here. While some still suggest avoiding certain foods, school boards have increasingly moved away from aiming for allergen-free zones.
Actually, that we don't know that it's an effective way of preventing food allergies in schools. So what we do instead is that we work on prevention.
Research has shown bans create a false sense of security and cover only certain allergies. Experts say that means teachers, staff have to be prepared to recognize and treat reactions fast and comfortably use EpiPens.
If it crosses your mind that your child, or that child, not your child, that child, might need an epinephrine, it's better to give it than be sorry, because the side effects are basically non-existent.
Some provinces have laws on how schools should handle allergies, but across the board, advocates say boosting staff education is key.
Knowing what is the trigger, knowing how to recognize the signs and symptoms. Even if someone is diagnosed with food allergies, it's not always so easy to know what's happening.
Janine Cafaro's daughter, Nora, is starting kindergarten. She has a series of severe allergies.
I would never expect other parents to not send eggs or sesame or avocado. Like, I can't expect it of them, but what I would love other parents to know is, like, maybe tell your kids, hey, you know what, don't share your food. Don't put your fingers in your friends' lunches.
And that's a lesson the school dietitian here teaches, getting everyone to play a part in keeping kids safe.
It's a lot about cleaning your hands before you eat. It's about cleaning your desk before and after you eat. It's about respecting also the other kids that might have allergies.
And experts say they'll be monitoring to see whether any changes can be brought forward to make sure children are safe. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Sun cloud mix this afternoon. There is some stormy weather expected overnight, but it's going to clear tomorrow morning. So the long weekend is looking good. There's a slight chance of rain on Sunday. If you're heading up to the cottage this weekend, there's a chance of rain in some areas on Sunday, but it's looking great overall. Saturday, hot. It's going to go up to above seasonal, 28 in the Kawarthas. Sunday, like I said, a little bit of rain. And then on Monday, things cool down, but lots of sunshine. We'll give you a look at the long-range forecast right after the break.
Well, we blinked, and the Friday of the August long weekend is here. The summer just flew by. It's still not over yet. There's a lot. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be doing all things summer this weekend, and it's nice when it's not a washout and the weather cooperates in a good way.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that it's not the end of summer.
No.
Yes, it is the last, unofficial end of summer with this weekend, but next week's actually looking pretty good and sunny, the first week of school, and the sunshine's going to last, and the hot temperatures are going to be around hopefully for a few more weeks until summer officially ends. Right now, if you look outside, this is a sun-cloud mix. It is humid outside as well. Conditions that are changing, so the clouds are going to clear. We're going to see more sun. Is that the air show?
The air show.
All right, this is perfect. If you're anywhere near the water, you're going to notice and see it.
And
course,
hear it.
And hear it, of course, which is great. So that's one of the great things happening around this city this long weekend. Also, Busker Fest and other festivals happening. Looking at the temperatures right now, it's 28 in Windsor, 23 in Toronto, 22 in Kingston. And what really the story is the humidex. It's much hotter. 38 feels like 38 in Windsor, 31 in Toronto. The high is going up to 28, but it's going to feel like 35 here, 37 Niagara Falls, 36. That's what it's going to feel like in Hamilton. If you're heading out for a game, a sporting event, things to do, it's going to be pretty mild. And then we do have the rain that's coming in later tonight. Looking at the lows overnight, a bit warmer than usual, 21 in Toronto, 18 in Peterborough, 19 in Waterloo, but it's going to feel like 29 in the city. And we'll show you the forecast radar. That rain is just heading our way at around 11:30 right there. It's going to hit the city of Toronto and other areas. And then eventually it's going to clear out by the morning, and even the clouds are going to clear as well. We'll give you more details on the forecast a little bit later on. That's the long-range forecast. And again, it's going to be lots of sunshine by next week. Well, all eyes will be on the skies this weekend as the Canadian International Air Show takes flight.
We saw earlier there in that shot the Canadian Air Force snowbirds, which really is a staple of the air show. It's so exciting, and what's happening is final preparations are underway as this late summer spectacle makes its return to our waterfront. We got a look this morning at some of the aircraft taking part in the aerial event over this long weekend. It will feature vintage planes as well as modern military jets. The Canadian Forces Snowbirds, as I noted, are going to be among the groups performing over Lake Ontario, along with Britain's Red Arrows aerobatic team.
Teamwork is a big part of what we do. So, as representatives of the forces, that skill, professionalism, teamwork is really what we're trying to live up to ourselves, and I'd say it's what we do every day.
For the displays, the pilots are focused on doing the best job they can. We have a very strict briefing and debriefing process. We have what we call the bubble, where everyone's focused before the display, before the brief. So they're going up there, focusing on the maneuvers we're flying, firstly making sure everything's very safe, but then making sure that we're putting on an entertaining and inspiring show for all the people watching us.
It's always so impressive. The 75th Canadian International Air Show takes place tomorrow through to Holiday Monday.
Coming up, it's not even just a new twist, it's an old-fashioned bank inspector fraud scheme. And there's a warning that people are being targeted once again by scammers. CTV's Pat Foran will have that story after the break.
Take you live now to Boston, where Boston College men's hockey coach Greg Brown and retired coach Jerry York are talking about the big news today. Tragic loss of Columbus Blue Jackets star Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew. They died after being hit by a car in New Jersey last night. Let's listen into their thoughts.
We talked about them being very close. Can you talk about the dynamic between the two of them when they were teammates for that season, how they would interact being on the same team?
Yeah. We had a great team. They would battle each other in practice. They would probably looked out for each other like brothers do. But yeah, the only thing you can say is their personality and their enthusiasm was truly infectious to the whole team. They could he was magical on the ice that year. Matty helped really, be a big-time player for us after that year, but them together was just just brought a juice to the Father Tony talks about bringing juice to the locker room. Well, those two guys brought it.
They were together 3 years here, so, like Greg said, Johnny was a magical, but Matty his complete level, and he pushed his brother so much that they had a great bond between them. But I think part of the reason Johnny was so good, not Greg and myself here, but the younger brother pushing him hard like that. So it was a fun dynamic to watch. And when we first came in, I remember Kevin Hayes, and we had a lot of really good players above him, Kreider and Tommy Cross, and they look at this little kid walking. It looks like he's 14 years old, and they'd heard so much about him, and very few had seen him play. And he didn't want to be the first one in the room. He was never going to be that type of guy. He just kind of came in, sat down, and I'm sure Kevin was looking over. This is the guy that's going to help us win a national title. Yeah, Kevin, he is. So, but he really became close, especially with, I'd say, Kevin Hayes. So that was his go-to, and actually became a dot rat. Spent a lot of weekends with Kevin Sr., the family, and in Dorchester. So he even though he's a kind of Philly kid, Jersey kid, he became quite a Boston young guy.
Jerry, you told me he almost didn't become an Eagle. He was going to be a Husky first, and then turned out playing for you as a Hobie Baker winner. You don't get a chance to coach too many of those guys.
Yeah, our best recruiter was Greg Cronin, I think.
You're listening to a live news conference. Boston College men's head coach Greg Brown and a retired coach Jerry York. They're reflecting on their time with Johnny Gaudreau. He and his brother both tragically died last night. They were hit by a car. It's really shaken the hockey community and beyond. And you can definitely tell they're emotional, having to come to terms with this news. We will continue to follow this story. I think one of the more notable things too in all of this is that this happened right before their sister's wedding today. So you can only imagine what this family is going through. Johnny was a father, and it's very tragic. We'll continue to follow this story, and we'll have more on CTV News at 5 and 6. To other news now. On a much lighter note, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre has issued a warning about an increase in the number of people who've been caught in what's called the bank investigator scam.
So far this year, Canadians have already lost almost $6 million to the scam, and the number of victims is growing. CTV's Pat Foran has the details.
I received a phone call stating they were from the RBC fraud department.
It was last month when Melanie Gardner of Brockville got a phone call from someone claiming to be with RBC. She was told her bank account was in jeopardy and she needed to transfer funds to keep them safe.
Had totally convinced me that my account had been compromised.
In a series of transactions, she was told to e-transfer money from her account, which would later be returned. But in the end, she was scammed out of $34,000.
I'm a single mother, and every bit of money that I had is totally gone.
Gardner banks with RBC and was told she would not be refunded the money. A spokesperson told CTV News, RBC will never ask you to participate in an undercover operation to prevent a fraud.
I don't understand why anything wasn't detected.
Jody Lang of Brampton got a similar phone call in May saying her account had been compromised. Scammers then gained access to her money.
There were things coming out and things going in, and I did not know what was going on.
In the end, Lang was scammed out of $50,000.
I thought that they were supposed to have fraud systems put in to protect us.
Lang is with Scotiabank, and she was also denied a refund. A spokesperson said Scotiabank will never ask for one-time passwords, PINs, and verification codes over a phone call.
Victims don't realize that what they're providing is giving
the person access to their bank account.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says never share links, codes, or bank card numbers. Never provide remote access to your computer. Banks won't advise you to transfer funds for security reasons. Don't assume the number on call display is accurate. And if you get a suspicious call, hang up and call back at a number you find yourself. Both victims say they can't afford to lose the money they were scammed out of and are shocked banks don't have better security systems to prevent fraud.
I cannot pay back money that I don't have.
We put all our money in banks, and then banks can't even keep us protected.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Sales of electric vehicles are nowhere near what the federal government wants them to be.
They want 60% of cars sold to be electric by the year 2030. And as CTV's Judy Trin found out, the main driver behind the low numbers is cost.
This dealership is doing brisk sales in EVs, selling about 25 low-emission vehicles a month.
We're certainly seeing a tremendous demand for these vehicles. It's growing month to month. It's very encouraging to see.
But the growth isn't keeping pace with the targets the federal government wants the industry to meet. Currently, 11% of all new sales are electric. By 2026, the federal government wants EV sales to account for 20% of all new vehicles. That target climbs to 60% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. The parliamentary budget officer says those targets won't be met unless the cost of an EV is priced thousands of dollars less than a traditional automobile.
The relative price of EVs versus combustion engine cars would need to go down by 31%. So total cost of ownership, that means the cost of the vehicles themselves would probably need either to come down or the gas-powered cars price going up.
The average cost of an electric vehicle is $73,000, a price that's $15,000 higher than gas-powered cars. When you factor in fuel prices, an EV costs less over the long term, but sales have stalled, just as incentives are being rolled back.
Quebec has decided to close its program in 2027. British Columbia has tightened the requirements, making it less accessible to more residents, and the federal government's program is very rapidly running out of money. We simply can't achieve the very aggressive sales targets the government has set.
Consumers also won't have access to cheap Chinese vehicles. Earlier this week, the Trudeau government slapped 100% tariffs on EVs made in China, a move in line with the U.S. to protect the North American industry. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Still to come on CTV News, we'll meet some of the people who are part of a dream cruise with stops around the world.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Talk about the cruise of a lifetime. Imagine spending 9 months seeing sights around the world.
St. John's, Newfoundland is just one of the stops. CTV's Garrett Berry has more.
Lima, Dubai, and for the only scheduled Canadian stop, St. John's.
Meeting so many different people, seeing the wonders of the world, it's been amazing.
Some of these passengers have been on board for more than 260 days, paying between $60,000 and $120,000.
Yeah, it was huge, and there was so much work to get ready for it. You know, medications, what do you pack?
The Serenade of the Sea is almost 300 meters long, brought 2,500 passengers, part of their ultimate world cruise package, a first of its kind for company Royal Caribbean, and considerably longer than some competitors' offerings. Passengers keep the same room for the whole trip, marking holidays on board and cruising some of the great wonders of the world.
We've seen so many things that you read about and hope maybe one day I'll get to do it. We decided to do it now, and it's been amazing.
The city of St. John's has been pushing hard to attract these boats during tourism season.
Quite a lot of competition. Like a lot of ports want these cruise ships in. They're great for economic boost, but also they just really give a great vibe to a city.
And right on the eastern edge of the continent, St. John's is a natural resting point.
A lot of people like being at sea, but it's occasionally you need a break. And it's nice to go on land, feel the land.
This one turned heads for just how long these passengers have been touring. For some, It was a spur-of-the-moment decision.
Kids sent it to us as a text message several years ago, and, oh, it's a joke, haha, wouldn't this be fun? And 6 days later, we sent them a text confirming we were going.
Passengers head back down the eastern seaboard for New York, the Caribbean, before eventually finishing their 9-month journey in Miami in September. Gary Perry, CTV News, St. John's.
We touched on it a little bit earlier, but Canada's economy grew more than expected in the second quarter, but there were signs of weakness.
Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg has the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Canadian economic output rose 2.1% on an annualized basis from April through June. That was the fastest growth since early 2023, but falling per person gross domestic product and softening household consumption should keep the Bank of Canada on track to cut rates for a third straight meeting on Wednesday of next week. Shares in Lululemon, which have slumped 50% this year, were little changed in early trading. The company cut its sales and profit outlook for the year amid increased competition and relentless inflation that is curbing demand for its pricey yoga pants. Shopper preferences have also moved towards baggier styles that are looser than the leggings Lululemon is famed for. The company paused sales of its breeze-through tights and shorts in July to address quality problems. And finally, the explosive growth of artificial intelligence and data centers continues to put strain on electricity grids all around the world. Dominion Energy, the utility in Northern Virginia's so-called data center alley, says the time it takes to connect large centers to the electric grid will be as long as 7 years. Utilities across the U.S. are facing the biggest demand jump in a generation, with the grid also strained by new factories and electrification of autos and heating. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg.
Tom Hanks is warning against AI ads using his image. Hanks issued the warning to his followers on Instagram, saying the ads were created fraudulently. The actor says they're using his likeness, name, and voice to promote miracle cures and wonder drugs. The 68-year-old who lives with type 2 diabetes says he only works with board-certified doctors regarding his treatment. Hanks is among several celebrities whose name and likeness have been falsely used in AI-generated content.
Coming up on CTV News, we've got some new insights into why parents are feeling stressed. That's after the break.
A new study from the top doctor in the United States suggests that parenting is now more stressful and more time-consuming than ever before. And that, in turn, can lead to loneliness. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has the story.
Patrick Martha, father to a 15-month-old baby, says being a parent is a 24/7 job.
The toughest thing is giving up some of that free time you had, but you know, it's replaced by all these wonderful things.
Martha loves being a dad. He also knows this is a busy chapter in life that requires constant attention. Other hobbies and activities have taken a backseat.
Without the time, it's nearly impossible.
Martha is not alone. In the U.S., a new report from the Surgeon General points to parenting pressures like managing busy schedules, bad behavior, and concerns about children's health and safety can cause a lack of sleep, serious money problems, and overall loneliness.
Parents are struggling with loneliness at higher levels than other adults, and this is particularly true for single parents.
When we say it takes a village to raise a child, that's also for the parents. It's not just for the child.
Psychologist Dana Lee Bagley says parents are best supported when they expand their social circle, show interest outside of the house, which allows them to take a break from parenting.
Because of social media, we end up thinking we're in connection with other people because we're watching other feeds, but that's not really social connection.
Lee Bagley says being a parent doesn't have to be an isolating task. There are strategies available to reduce stress and improve the quality of family life. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
As the Summer Paralympics continue in Paris, a former Humboldt Bronco made his debut at the Games. Jacob Wasserman was left paralyzed from the waist down from the 2018 bus crash that claimed the lives of many of his teammates. He's now pursuing a career in para-rowing. He placed 6th in a heat today and will have a chance to try again to qualify for a final tomorrow.
Ottawa is pledging more than $7 million to establish a first-of-its-kind National Institute for People of African Descent.
So this will serve as a center for conducting research to inform our programs and policies from Black-led and Black-centric perspective, building knowledge, engaging with communities, but more importantly, amplifying the amazing work that is being done at the grassroots local level.
Caribbean African Canadian Social Services, or CAFCAN, will lead the establishment of the new institute, which will also support Ottawa's efforts to tackle racism and discrimination. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.